Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Tania León, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning composer and the Debs Composers Chair for Carnegie Hall. Tania León, welcome to Arts Engines.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, and obviously I am so deeply honored to be able to have you on the show. I've had the benefit of being able to see firsthand and experience your work for, just literally a lifetime. And I am in awe of your talent, your leadership, and the role that you have, not just in our field, but in society as a whole. So it is truly wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I figured, why don't we delve right in? And you have this kind of, unique role at Carnegie Hall and kind of being this Debs Composers Chair. And just wondering, as you kind of think about a residency like that, I was curious because we definitely have many composers who tune in and especially many institutions that are thinking about engaging with composers in different ways. And just wondering, when you have this type of residency, do you kind of approach it from a certain standpoint, or do you kind of have certain goals related to it as you look at it from your perspective as a composer?
Of course, I have given the task of curating many of the programs, and one of the things that I zero into is to expose as many voices as possible, and not only voices from the young, but also seasoned composers. And that is something that have actually, pleased me tremendously because of the type of relationship that I have with the community of composers in the nation. Yes.
That's awesome. And when you think about that, and especially this role that you're able to have mentoring younger composers, do you is there any, if any of the young composers who are emerging composers who are tuning in, as you think about mentoring composers, are there kind of, one or two things that you're like, here's what you need to get right? Like, as you think about and you're building your career, you think about your role as a composer, here are one or two things that you need to get these right. If you do, you really increase the likelihood that you can, have a fulfilling career.
Well, one of the things that I advocate is for the composer to think from the very beginning, there is something that is a myth that is talking about, where is my voice? You see that the composer is trying to find their voice. And I think that if you're authentic from the very beginning, your voice is going to be showing up. And I'm saying that because later on, 10, 20 years after, you go back to your first works and you're going to see traces of what you're doing then. So it's something that that type of mentality or thinking that the composer finds their voice when they are 40 or 50 or 60 years old, the voice is there. The only thing is that it has been sort of like manifesting in different, very, very slightly, but it's there. And nowadays, when we actually study the masters and we go back to their first generation of works, we find that signature from the very beginning. And so the voice is there. The only thing is that one has to be very authentic. And one of the things also for that authenticity, I think that one of the best things is not to think so much cerebrally, you see, but to actually invite the intuition to be a partner, you see.
I love that. I love that. And especially kind of that role of intuition. And I think also for just us as audiences, I think we respond, right? When a composer's intuition just takes us to a space or a place we haven't been before, I think can really be powerful.
Yeah, I think that that is actually something that there's no separation between the self and the sound. So, yeah.
Love that. I am just settling that in right now. The sound absolutely beautiful. To also delve into kind of with your work specifically, right? It seems like you kind of love exploring kind of these boundaries of genres and crossing genres and incorporating. Just wondering if you could share kind of a little about that, either inspiring it and or how you kind of see that coming out. And I think you even have some, concerts relating to Carnegie coming up that engage and incorporate that.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, actually, I also mentioned where did that begin? And that meant many, many years ago when I saw my father after not seeing him for a long time. My father heard my music of the time. At the time, I was very involved in, the practices of the different aspects of serialism, 12 tones, I mean, pointillism, all the isms, all isms that were actually discussed and actually investigated in the practices. And my father heard my music and he said, your music sounds very interesting. And then he paused and he looked at me and he said, where are you in your music? And unfortunately, I didn't know that that was our last conversation because, I mean, months after that, he collapsed and he left the world. And he left me with that work to actually process. I mean, it was immense in a way, to hear his statement and the fact that we never had the chance to discuss it. So that is when I started sort of like deviating myself and including in my music so much that I knew, specifically at the point that I was starting to include polyrhythmia, which is something that I inherited from the culture and music of my own culture, you see? Because I don't call it folklore, I call it the classical music of my culture, you see?
And
Yeah.
it's so clear, and especially going back to the authenticity piece that you talked about, which is so critically important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is the beginning of that seed, the beginning that propelled me to actually be much more demonstrative of what the sounds of my preference were, as opposed to be following a technique per
Yeah.
se. The technique is fantastic, I mean, because it's allowed me to write, you see. But what was I going to say that didn't have anything to do with the techniques of sounds as well, you see? So everybody has their own, I mean, I speak with an accent. There's nothing I can do about it. So my music has an accent also. And that accent, since I love the cultures of the world, I get very, very involved with trying to find out. I mean, if I am on the trip, professional trip, I always find a time so I can go and see the local musicians, to see the improvisers, the musicians in the street. I mean, I study the music of that specific culture. And that is what have made my music to be very rich in a way because, I learn a great deal.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love that. And
yeah.
especially the consistent learning and always evolving and developing. And of course, that's why just the body of work that you have and continue to create is so extraordinary. Thinking about kind of as you think about the audiences for a particular work. So, right. So I know Carnegie Hall has their free series, I think, coming up this summer, and you'll be having some concerts with the Jack Quartet, Harlem Chamber players. And just thinking when you think about and or do you think about kind of audiences specifically so that if you're thinking about creating performances for a broader audience or those types of things, does that enter into how you think about that and how you construct concerts like that?
Mhm, mhm. Well, the main thing that I'm thinking, since I am an active composer, is that I am actually giving opportunity to many composers as possible in each program. And the thing is that I would like the audiences to understand that music is very important to us. Everywhere we go, we are listening to music. However, we don't know who wrote it. It doesn't matter what genre of music it is, you see, because I mean, in my way of assessment, a composer that write tango is as valuable as the one that write films, as the ones that write a symphony, you see. So there's different languages of music. So this is what I have tried to do with the grading, to include different languages coming out of composers that are not that visible and composers that looks like society. And then on top of that, I would like to actually pose the thought that whatever we're doing now is going to be discussed a century from now. The same way that we're discussing Beethoven 2, 3 centuries ago, whatever we're doing now globally is going to be discussed. We are writing the testament of what that is going to be 100 years from now, 200 years from now. So it's important to know that these creators of sound have a place in that Bible that we are actually writing right now. You see? And the more that the audience actually understand that these are human beings, I don't look like Beethoven. I would never be. True. You see what I mean? But the thing is that that kind of image that everybody has when they say the word composer, you see, has to be demystified. And that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, in this curating, that you're going to see names there, the people that are not familiar with the names that they are familiar with, and different generations of people, different background, different ethnicities. Yes.
I love that. It really is truly extraordinary. And also the combination of not only, of course, right, the incredible impact that you're having with the creations that you have shared with all of us, but this role you're having with so many emerging composers and being able to not only serve as a mentor, but an advocate for their work is just, it's truly extraordinary. So unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all of my guests, right? You emanate such joy from the work that you do, and it's just, it's literally palpable. But there's got to be some tougher days where it may seem like things aren't coming together. And just wondering, as someone who is a leader in our field, are there things that you do on tougher days, or days when you feel there's a great challenge? Is there something you do or a mechanism you have that helps you through those toughest times?
Well, I mean, I think that I have been very blessed because the way that my story starts doesn't have anything to do with the way that the story is ending. You see, I was born in a island out of a family, a very poor family in a poor neighborhood. And I was the first one that ventured to go out in the world. And the story has been full of surprises. So when I have challenges that are immense, that's where I go back. I go back to the little room where I was, growing up. I mean, and I go back to that wall where it had the picture of the Eiffel Tower and Elvis Presley, and and all the dreams that I created. And I told my family when I was 9 that I was going to live in Paris, and I end up living in New York. So I mean, so therefore, any challenge that comes to me, I try not to actually dwell on it too long because I don't want my energy to actually collapse. And like everybody, I mean, life is ups and down, ups and down, ups and down. But you know, now that we're looking out into space and the planets and everything, we have to realize how short a life we have. So if we are not going to actually use the limited time that we have in the physical world, so that's how I bounce back. You see, remembering my ancestors and the encouragement that they gave me. And now I hope that spiritually speaking, that they are looking at this because, I mean, they gave me so much that I would like to recognize them all the time.
Tania León, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron. I admire you tremendously. Yes.